The stars had never looked so threatening. Commander Day 1 stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station, watching the massive ships appear one by one. They were nothing like human vessels. These were elegant, almost beautiful in their alien design. Smooth curves and glowing energy fields that pulsed with colors humans had no names for. 12 ships, each one 3 times larger than Earth's biggest carrier. "Sir, they're hailing us again," said the communications officer. Day 1 nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered. An alien face appeared. It had 6 eyes arranged in a circle, mandibles that clicked when it spoke, and a chitinous shell that reflected the bridge lights. The translator software turned its sounds into flat, emotionless words. "Humans, you have 3 days remaining. Submit your military technology and accept collective guidance, or be removed." Day 1 kept his face calm, though his hands tightened behind his back. "We've told you. Earth is a free world. We won't surrender our right to defend ourselves." The alien's mandibles clicked faster. Was that laughter, anger? Impossible to tell. "You misunderstand your position. The Galactic Collective has brought peace to 400 worlds. Species that resist are corrected. Species that refuse correction are eliminated. You are not special. You are simply late to join." The transmission ended. Day 1 turned to his crew. Young faces, most of them. They'd trained for war against other humans, territorial disputes, resource conflicts. Not this, never this. "Get me the Secretary General," he said quietly. Down on Earth, in the emergency meeting of the United Government Assembly, chaos ruled. Representatives shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others called for total war. A few simply sat in shock, unable to process that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted them dead or enslaved. Dr. Hannah sat in the corner, reviewing her notes for the 100th time. She was a xenobiologist, and for 3 weeks she had been trying to understand the collective, trying to find common ground, trying to make peace. She had failed. The aliens didn't see humans as people. They saw problems. Humanity was too aggressive, they said. Too emotional. Too unpredictable. These traits made humans dangerous to the galactic order. Better to control them now or erase them completely. Hannah had tried explaining human culture, human potential, human dreams. The collective representative had listened politely, then asked why any of that mattered. Dangerous species were dangerous. That was all there was to it. "Dr. Hannah!" The Secretary General was calling her. "Your assessment. Can we negotiate?" All eyes turned to her. Hannah stood slowly. She thought of her years studying the possibility of alien life. She'd imagined first contact 1,000 different ways. None of them had been like this. "No," she said simply. "They don't negotiate. They dictate. To them, this is mercy. They're giving us a chance to live as their servants. That's as generous as they get." The room erupted again. Hannah sat down feeling sick. In the military sector of Luna Base, Captain Sung Ho checked his fighter for the 3rd time. Everything was perfect. It always was. But he checked anyway because that's what kept pilots alive. "You're wasting time," said his wingman, a young pilot named Ji-won. "Those ships are still in high orbit. We're not flying today." Sung Ho grinned. "You never know. Maybe today's the day they stop talking and start shooting." "That's what you want? A war with aliens?" His grin faded. "I want them to turn around and leave. But if they won't," he patted his fighter's hull, "then I want to be ready." Ji-won was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we can win?" Sung Ho looked up at the distant Earth, visible through the hangar's atmospheric shield. His home, his planet. "I think we have to try." In a secured laboratory beneath the mountains of what used to be South Korea, Yuna worked frantically. She was young, barely 25, but she'd revolutionized human faster-than-light travel 2 years ago. Now Earth needed another miracle from her. The problem was simple. Human weapons were designed to fight other humans. Missiles, railguns, lasers, all meant for ships with human-made armor, human-designed shields, human technology. The collective ships were different. Their shields operated on principles human science barely understood. Their hulls were made from materials that seemed to ignore physics as humans knew it. Yuna stared at the data from the long-range scans. The alien ships were just sitting there waiting, confident. They knew humans couldn't hurt them, unless, Yuna whispered to herself, we stopped trying to fight them the right way. She began typing furiously. Human technology was primitive compared to the collectives, but primitive didn't mean useless. Primitive meant simple. Simple meant unpredictable. Maybe that was the answer. The 3 days passed like 3 hours. On the final day, Daewon stood on his bridge again. Every defense station was at full alert. Every ship, every satellite, every weapon humanity possessed was ready. The collective ships moved forward. "Incoming transmission," said the communications officer. The same alien face appeared. "Your time has expired." No surrender was received. "Correction will now begin. We will start with your Mars colony. Consider it a demonstration." "Wait." Daewon started, but the transmission ended. On Mars, in the colony of Olympus Dome, 50,000 people were living their lives. Working, eating, arguing, laughing. Human lives, normal and precious. The collective ships fired once. Olympus Dome simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a glittering city under a transparent dome. The next moment there was only a crater, smooth and perfectly circular, as if the colony had been erased from reality. 50,000 people gone, just like that. Daewon watched the sensor data, his face frozen. His crew stood in shocked silence. "Sir?" someone whispered. "Orders?" Daewon's hands were shaking. Mars. They'd destroyed Mars. 50,000 people murdered to make a point. He thought of his own family, lost years ago in Earth's resource wars. He thought of every person on his station who trusted him to lead. He thought of Earth below, with its 8 billion people waiting to learn if they would live or die. The rage came slowly, burning cold. "Send a message to the collective," he said, his voice steady despite everything. "Tell them Earth's answer." "What should I say, sir?" Daewon looked at the tactical display. The collective ships were moving toward Earth now, confident and unstoppable. They thought humanity would break. They thought 50,000 dead would teach the lesson. They were wrong. "Tell them we will not kneel. Tell them if they want Earth, they'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands. Tell them." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Tell them that killing us was always an option. But they've chosen to make it personal. And humans are very good at being personal." Across Earth, the message went out. Not just Daewon's message to the collective, but the news of Mars. The images of Olympus Dome before and after. The names of the 50,000 dead. The argument stopped. The debates ended. Every government, every nation, every human everywhere suddenly understood what was coming. War. Not a war they had chosen. Not a war they wanted, but a war they would fight. In homes and offices and military bases across the planet, people made their choices. Some prayed. Some cried. Some said goodbye to loved ones. Some loaded weapons they hoped they'd never need to use. And some, like Sung-ho strapping into his fighter. Like Yuna downloading her experimental weapons programs. Like Hana broadcasting messages to the collective begging them to reconsider. Like Daewon giving orders to his fleet, simply did what humans had always done when facing extinction. They refused to accept it. The collective ships moved into attack formation. They had done this 400 times before. They knew how it would end, but they had never fought humans before. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not fight like anyone else. The collective fleet came like a storm. 300 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Luna. They were smaller than the 12 command ships, but each one still dwarfed human vessels. The alien formation was perfect, mathematical, beautiful in its precision. Daewon watched them approach. His defense fleet was ready. 62 ships. That was everything Earth had. Patrol boats, converted mining vessels, military carriers, experimental prototypes. Against 300. All ships, this is Daewon. Remember your training. Stay close to the debris fields. Use the asteroids. Make them work for every inch, he paused. And remember Mars, 50,000 people. Fight for them. The response came from 62 captains at once. For Mars, for Earth. The collective ships opened fire first. Beams of concentrated energy lanced through space. One human destroyer simply vanished, its shields overwhelmed in a microsecond. Another took a glancing hit and spun out of control, venting atmosphere. All fighters launch, Daewon ordered. From the human ships, hundreds of small fighters poured out like angry insects. Sung-ho led his squadron, the Iron Dragons, directly into the enemy formation. Stay tight, he called to his pilots. G1 on my wing! The alien ships were fast, but they fought in formations. Predictable formations. They stayed in their assigned positions, coordinated by some central computer, moving as one perfect unit. Humans didn't fight like that. Sung Ho dove toward an enemy cruiser, then rolled at the last second, slipping under its shields before they could adjust. His missiles hit the ship's underside. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to make it break formation just for a moment. That moment was all Ji-won needed. She came in from above, targeting the same spot. Her railguns tore through weakened armor. The enemy ship began to list. "That's one," Sung Ho shouted. "See? They bleed." But the collective adapted quickly. Their ships began to spread out, covering each other. Energy beams filled the space around the human fighters. Sung Ho watched 3 of his pilots die in bright flashes. Dragon 3 is gone. Dragon 7 is... The communication cut off in static. Sung Ho gritted his teeth. "Reform on me." "We go for the flagship." "That's suicide." Someone protested. "Everything's suicide today," Sung Ho shot back. "Might as well make it count." On the orbital station, Daewon was fighting his own battle. Not with weapons, but with decisions. Every choice cost lives. Pull ships back to save them? Or push forward and hope for a breakthrough? "Commander, the flagship is targeting us," an officer reported. "Evasive pattern," Daewon ordered. But the station was huge and slow. There was no real evasion possible. The flagship fired. The beam hit the station's shields. Alarms screamed. Power fluctuated. Shields at 40%. "Reroute everything from non-essential systems," Daewon said. "Weapons, focus all fire on that flagship." It was desperate. It was probably useless. But Daewon remembered something from the old wars between human nations. If you can't win, make them pay. Make them remember the cost. The station's main cannons fired. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched. Laser batteries burned at full power, overheating and probably destroying themselves in the process. Most of the weapons were intercepted. Most bounced off shields. But one missile, just one, got through a gap in the defensive fire. It hit the flagship's port side and detonated. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a small sun. When the light faded, the flagship was still there. But it was damaged. Atmosphere vented from a hull breach. Its shields flickered and failed. Daewon couldn't believe it. "Did we just... Hull breach confirmed on the enemy flagship," an officer shouted. "Their shields are down." For the first time since the battle began, Daewon felt something other than dread. It was working. Barely, desperately, but it was working. "All ships target the flagship. Now!" Every human vessel turned their weapons on the wounded giant. It was like ants attacking a lion, but the ants had venom. Deep inside her mountain laboratory, Yuna was watching the battle data stream in. She saw the patterns. The collective ships were powerful but predictable. Their shields regenerated quickly. Their weapons never missed. Their formations were perfect, and that was their weakness. Yuna activated her emergency channel to the fleet. "Daewon, this is Yuna. I have something." "It's crazy, but..." "Everything today is crazy," Daewon interrupted. "What do you have?" "They're shields. They're programmed to block anything moving fast. Missiles, bullets, energy beams. But they ignore slow-moving objects. Debris, asteroids, anything below a certain speed. Why would they do that? Because normally slow things aren't threats. But we're not normal." Yuna's voice was excited now. "If we coat our missiles with debris, cover them in asteroid fragments, they'll read as slow-moving junk. The shields will let them through." Daewon was quiet for 3 seconds. 3 very long seconds while his station shook from another hit. "How fast can you transmit the modifications to the fleet?" "Already doing it. Every ship should have it in 30 seconds. You're either a genius or we're all about to die stupidly." "Maybe both," Yuna said. The modified missiles launched a minute later. They were covered in chunks of rock and ice, spinning slowly, looking like debris from destroyed ships. The collective's sensors saw them. Their computers calculated. Not a threat. Too slow. The missiles passed through the shields. 20 enemy ships died in the next 5 minutes. The collective fleet faltered. For 800 years they had fought wars. For 800 years they had won. Species surrendered or were destroyed, but they always fought predictably. They used logic. They used tactics. Humans used chaos. Sung Ho took advantage of the confusion. He led his remaining fighters straight through the gap in the enemy formation, targeting the damaged flagship. "All dragons, arm everything. We only get one pass. Only 6 of us left, G1 said quietly. Then 6 will have to be enough. They dove toward the flagship. Its point defense systems tracked them. Energy beams cut through space. Dragon 11 died. Dragon 4 spiraled away, crippled. 4 fighters left. G1, Sung-ho said. If I don't make it back, shut up and fly, she snapped. Sung-ho laughed despite everything. Yes, ma'am. They fired at point-blank range. Every missile, every bullet, everything they had. The flagship's damaged hull couldn't take it. Explosions rippled across its surface. Secondary detonations bloomed like flowers of death. The flagship began to die. Pull up! Pull up! Sung-ho shouted. 3 fighters escaped the explosion. Ji-won, Sung-ho, and Dragon 9. They watched the massive alien ship tear itself apart, debris spinning off into space. For a moment, the entire battle stopped. Both sides simply watched the flagship die. Then the collective fleet began to retreat. They didn't run exactly. They moved back in good order, their formations perfect even in withdrawal. But they moved away from Earth, back toward deep space. On his station, Daewon watched them go. Around him, his crew started to cheer. But Daewon didn't cheer. He was counting. 41 human ships destroyed. 21 damaged beyond immediate repair. 3,000 dead. Maybe more when the final count came in. But they'd won. Somehow, impossibly, they'd won. Hana was in the communications center when the news came. The collective fleet had withdrawn. Earth was safe. For now. She immediately opened channels to the alien fleet. This is Dr. Hana of Earth. We don't want war. We defended ourselves, but we're willing to talk peace. Please respond. Silence. Please. Enough people have died today. Let's find another way. Still silence. Then, finally, a transmission came. Not from the collective fleet, but from somewhere else. Deep space. It was heavily encrypted, but Hana's team broke it quickly. What they found made her blood run cold. It was a collective military report, routine communication between admirals, and in it, casually mentioned like weather data, was a simple fact. The fleet that had just attacked Earth was a preliminary force. A test. The real invasion fleet, 2,000 ships strong, was already being assembled. Earth hadn't won the war. They'd won a single battle, and the enemy now knew that humans were dangerous. The next fleet would come prepared. Hana sat back, her hands shaking. Outside, across Earth, people were celebrating. They'd beaten the aliens. Humanity had stood up to the galaxy and won. Songs were being written. Heroes were being made. Sung-ho landed his fighter on the orbital station. Ground crew rushed to help him out. They were cheering, slapping his back, calling him a legend. Ji-won landed beside him. She climbed out of her cockpit and just stood there, staring at nothing. We did it, Sung-ho said to her. She looked at him. Did we? Did we really? Before he could answer, alarms began to sound again. New contacts, more ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. But these were different, bigger, and there were so many more of them. Daewon's voice came over every speaker in the fleet. This is Commander Daewon to all forces. We have incoming. Count is 2,000 vessels. Silence. Prepare for evacuation of Earth. Authorization code Alpha 0. All civilians to designated shelters. All military personnel. His voice cracked slightly. All military personnel. This is not a drill. Earth cannot be held. I repeat, Earth cannot be held. Sung-ho looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, beyond what his eyes could see, an armada was coming. An armada that would not make the same mistakes as the first fleet. Ji-won stood beside him. What do we do? Sung-ho touched his fighter, his beautiful, deadly machine. It had kept him alive through the impossible battle. It wouldn't be enough for what was coming. We do what we always do, he said quietly. We fight. We buy time. We make them pay. And then, he looked at her. Really looked at her. Young, brave, terrified, and trying not to show it. And then we hope someone smarter than us figures out how to win. The sky above Earth burned. Day one made the hardest decision of his life while watching his home planet die. The collective's main fleet had arrived in force, and this time they weren't testing. They weren't demonstrating. They were exterminating. All colony ships begin departure, he ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the command console so hard his knuckles turned white. Military vessels will cover your escape. On the surface, the evacuation was chaos. Millions of people tried to reach the shuttle ports. Families were separated. Children cried. Old people refused to leave their homes. Security forces did their best to maintain order, but order was a fragile thing when the world was ending. Major cities were the first targets. New York, Beijing, London, Mumbai, São Paulo. The collective's weapons struck from orbit with surgical precision. Entire city blocks simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not destroyed, but erased. Turned into glass-smooth craters that still glowed with heat. In his mountain bunker, Yuna worked through tears. She was uploading everything, every piece of human knowledge to the colony ships. Literature, science, history, art, music. If humanity was going to survive scattered across the stars, they needed to remember who they were. Upload complete on Colony Ship 7, her assistant reported. Good. Start on 8. Yuna wiped her eyes. There was no time for grief. Grief was a luxury. How many ships have launched? 43 so far. Target is 300 ships, each carrying 100,000 people. 30 million survivors out of 8 billion. The mathematics of extinction. Hana was on one of those ships, but not by choice. Security forces had physically carried her aboard when she refused to leave. She was too valuable, they said. Humanity needed people who understood the enemy. Now she stood at a viewport watching Earth shrink behind them. Watching her home die, Dr. Hana, a young officer, approached. We've received your message routing. You wanted all collective transmissions? Yes, everything they say. I need to understand them. The officer hesitated. Ma'am, some of it is. It's hard to listen to. I know. Hana turned from the viewport. Show me anyway. The collective transmissions were clinical. They discussed the destruction of Earth like farmers discussing crop removal. Efficient. Necessary. No malice, no satisfaction. Just a job being done. But there was something else in the transmissions. Something Hana almost missed. References to other species. Other worlds. 40 civilizations subjugated. And in the data fragments, coordinates, names, locations of these conquered species. Hana began to plan. In orbit, Daewon's remaining fleet fought a delaying action. They couldn't win. They couldn't even slow the collective down significantly. But every minute they bought was another 1,000 civilians evacuated. Sung-Ho and Ji-Won flew mission after mission. Their fighters were battered, running on emergency power and prayers. Half their squadron was gone. But they kept flying. Dragon Leader, you need to pull back, Daewon's voice crackled over the radio. Your ship is falling apart. Not yet, Sung-Ho replied. He could see another wave of collective fighters approaching a fleeing colony ship. Got civilians to cover. Sung-Ho, that's an order. Sorry, Commander. Breaking up. Can't hear you. Sung-Ho switched off his radio and looked at Ji-Won. You should head back. Your ship is in better shape and leave you alone. Not happening. They dove toward the enemy fighters together. 3 months later, Earth was a dead world. The collective had been thorough. Cities were craters, forests were ash, oceans were poisoned. The planet that had birthed humanity was now a tomb, but humanity itself lived on, scattered, broken, but alive. The colony ships had dispersed according to plan, each one heading to a different star system. No central location, no target for the collective to strike. They would hide in the vast dark between stars and survive. Daewon commanded from a mobile station now, a converted colony ship called the Ark. It moved constantly, never staying in one place longer than a week. From here, he coordinated the scattered fragments of human resistance. It wasn't a proper military anymore. It was guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale. Commander, we have confirmation, an intelligence officer reported. The Titan raid was successful. Sung-Ho captured 3 collective supply ships. Daewon allowed himself a small smile. Casualties? 2 fighters lost. But he got away clean. The collective is calling him the Ghost of Titan now. They're spooked. Good. Let them be afraid for once. The war became something new, something the collective had never faced before. Humans stopped trying to fight pitched battles. Instead, they hit supply lines. They sabotaged stations. They hacked communications. They spread false intelligence. They became guerrillas in the void. Yuna's technical genius became legendary. She developed new weapons using stolen collective technology, combined with human ingenuity. Virus programs that could shut down alien ships. Mines that mimicked asteroids. Drones that learned from every encounter, adapting faster than the collective's rigid programming could counter. Her greatest creation was the Ghost Drive. It bent light around a ship, making it nearly invisible to sensors. Combined with cold-running engines and minimal power output, human ships became phantoms. They could move through collective space unseen. Sung-Ho used the Ghost Drive better than anyone. He would appear from nowhere, strike hard, and vanish before the enemy could respond. His raiders stole supplies, destroyed outposts, and freed prisoners from collective labor camps. The freed prisoners were the first surprise. Many were from other subjugated species. The collective had told them resistance was impossible. Then humans showed them it wasn't. Hana made contact with these liberated aliens. She learned their languages, their cultures, their grievances against the collective, and slowly, carefully, she planted seeds of rebellion. The collective is weak, she would tell them. They depend on fear. But humans have shown that fear can be broken. Join us. Some refused, too terrified of collective reprisal. But others listened. And some even helped, passing intelligence, sabotaging their own overseers, quietly preparing for the day when they might be free. Not all raids were successful. Humans died every day. Ships were destroyed. Entire cells of resistance were wiped out when the collective found them. Daewon read every casualty report. Every name. He owed them that much. "Sir, you can't read all of them," his second-in-command said gently. "There are too many, I know." But Daewon kept reading anyway. 1 year passed. Then 2, then 3. The collective grew frustrated. They had never had to hunt an enemy before. Species either fought in open battle and lost or surrendered immediately. Humans did neither. "They're like vermin," one collective admiral complained in an intercepted transmission. "We exterminate them in one place and they appear in 3 others." Hana smiled when she heard that recording. Good. Let them be frustrated. Frustration led to mistakes, and the collective was making mistakes. They started fighting among themselves. Different species in the alliance blamed each other for the failure to eliminate humanity. Resource allocation became a source of conflict. Some members wanted to commit more forces to hunting humans. Others wanted to withdraw and defend their own territories. The cracks were showing. In the 3rd year, Hana made her most important discovery. She was analyzing captured data when she found it. A schedule, a meeting. Once per solar cycle, the collective's High Council gathered at a station called the Nexus to coordinate their alliance. Every leader, one place, one time. She brought the information to Daewon immediately. He studied the data in silence. The Nexus was deep in collective space. Getting there would require passing through dozens of defended systems. Getting out again would be impossible. "It's a suicide mission," he said finally. "Yes," Hana agreed. "But if we eliminate the High Council, the collective collapses. Their species will turn on each other. The alliance falls apart. We'd lose everyone we send. We're already losing people every day, but this would end the war." Daewon was quiet for a long time. He thought of Earth. He thought of the 3,000 who died in the first battle. He thought of every name and every casualty report since. "I'll lead the mission personally," he said. "Sir, you can't." "Yes, I can. I won't ask anyone to die for something I'm not willing to die for myself." He looked at Hana. "Start assembling a team. The best people we have. Tell them the truth. Tell them it's one way, and tell them it could end everything." Word spread through the human resistance. The commander was planning something big, something final. He needed volunteers. Sung-Ho heard the call while refueling at a hidden base. He didn't hesitate. "I'm in." Ji-won, now a squadron leader herself, volunteered immediately. "Where he goes, I go." Yuna left her laboratory for the first time in months. "You'll need technical support. Someone who can hack their systems." A soldier named Taimin stepped forward. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words since losing his entire family on Earth. But he was the best close combat specialist humanity had. "I'm coming." More volunteers came. More than needed. Day-1 had to turn people away. The team gathered on the Ark, 12 people. 12 who would try to kill the gods of the galaxy. We have one captured collective ship, Day-1 told them. Yuna will modify it. We'll use it to infiltrate the Nexus during the council meeting. Hana will get us past security using her knowledge of their protocols. Taemin's team will handle ground combat. Sungho and Ji-won will provide fighter escort and extraction. Extraction to where? Someone asked. Day-1 met their eyes. I won't lie. Extraction is optimistic. This is about the mission, not survival. No one backed out. They trained for 3 months. Every detail planned. Every contingency covered. Yuna worked miracles with the captured ship, installing hidden weapons, ghost drives, and AI cores that could mimic collective navigation patterns. She called the ship's AI Area. It was experimental. Too experimental, really. But Yuna had given it human learning algorithms. It could adapt, think, even feel in a limited way. Will it work? Day-1 asked. Honestly, I don't know. But it's the best chance we have. The night before departure, Sungho found Ji-won on the observation deck. Nervous, he asked. Terrified, she looked at him. You? Same. He pulled out his lucky coin, the one he'd carried through every battle. Here, you take it. I can't. Yes, you can. Because you're going to make it back. Tell the story. Tell them what we did. Ji-won took the coin with shaking hands. We're all coming back. Sungho smiled. They both knew it was a lie. But it was a kind lie. The mission launched at dawn. 1 ship, 12 people heading into the heart of enemy territory. Behind them, the scattered fragments of humanity waited, hoped, prayed, and prepared for what would come next, whether the mission succeeded or failed. The journey to the Nexus took 17 days. 17 days of silence, running dark through collective space, hoping their disguise held. Inside the captured ship, the team prepared. Day-1 drilled them on the plan until everyone could recite it in their sleep. Taemin's combat team trained in the cargo bay, practicing zero-gravity fighting techniques. Yuna monitored Arya constantly, making adjustments to keep the AI stable. She's learning fast, Yuna said one evening. Maybe too fast. Mom, was that a problem? Day-1 asked. I don't know. She's developing something like emotions. Yesterday she asked me if we were going to die. What did you tell her? The truth, probably. Arya's voice came through the ship's speakers. It sounded almost human now, with inflections and pauses that shouldn't have been possible for an artificial mind. I calculate mission success probability at 8%. That high? Sung-ho joked from the pilot's cabin. The calculation includes unlikely favorable variables. Without those, probability drops to 2%. Well, we've beaten worse odds, Sung-ho said. He didn't mention that they really hadn't. Ji-won floated next to him in the zero-gravity cockpit. She'd been quieter than usual the last few days. Hey, Sung-ho said softly. You okay? Just thinking. If we don't make it back, will it matter? Will anyone remember? Hana will make sure they remember. That's why she's not here. Someone has to tell the story. I wish she was here anyway. Me too. On the 17th day, the Nexus appeared on sensors. It was massive. Larger than any station humanity had ever built. A ring of metal and energy fields orbiting a dead star, hosting the rulers of 400 worlds. Approaching security perimeter, Arya announced. Preparing false identification codes. Day-1 took a deep breath. This was it. If their disguise failed, they'd be destroyed instantly. All hands silent running. No unnecessary communications. The security scan hit them like a wave. Energy beams swept over the hull, analyzing every molecule. Computer systems probed their databases, checking registrations, looking for discrepancies. Yuna watched her monitors, ready to counter-hack if anything went wrong. Sweat ran down her face despite the cool air. The scan passed. The energy beams withdrew. Clearance granted, Arya said. We are authorized to dock. The tension in the ship dropped slightly. They'd made it past the first barrier. The Nexus traffic control directed them to a docking port. Around them, hundreds of other collective ships moved in precise patterns. Merchant vessels, military escorts, diplomatic cruisers. The heart of the Galactic Empire, completely unaware that enemies had just slipped inside. Landing in 3 minutes, Sung-ho reported. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was racing. The ship settled into its designated dock with a soft clang. Docking clamps engaged. Airlocks aligned. Taemin's combat team moved into position. weapons concealed beneath diplomatic robes. They looked like a trade delegation, harmless, bored even. Hana had briefed them extensively on collective customs, how to walk, how to speak, what gestures to avoid. They'd practiced until it was automatic. Remember, Day One said quietly, we're merchants from the Vryn territories. We don't speak unless spoken to. Eyes down, posture submissive. We're nothing important. They exited the ship. The Nexus interior was breathtaking, soaring architecture that seemed to defy physics, light that came from nowhere and everywhere, alien species of every imaginable form moving through corridors wide enough to fly ships through. No one looked at the small delegation of Vryn traders. No one cared. They followed the route Hana had mapped, through commercial sectors, past security checkpoints, into administrative areas. Each step took them deeper into the station, closer to the council chamber. At the third checkpoint, they almost failed. A security officer, some kind of floating jellyfish creature, stopped them. Its translator spoke in flat tones. Credentials. Taman handed over their forged documents without a word. The officer scanned them, paused, scanned again. Day One's hand moved slowly toward his concealed weapon. If this went wrong here, the mission ended. The officer handed the documents back. Proceed. They walked on, not too fast, not showing relief. That was close, someone whispered. Quiet. Day One hissed. The council chamber was ahead. They could see it now. A massive door guarded by two warriors from a species that looked like living crystals. Beyond that door, the High Council was meeting. All the leaders who had ordered Earth's destruction. Timon made a small gesture. His team spread out slightly, taking positions. They looked casual, but each person had a clear field of fire. Yuna, are you ready? Day One sub-vocalized into his hidden communicator. Back on the ship, Yuna sat in front of her console. Ready, on your mark, I'll hit their security systems. Sung-Ho, status. In his fighter hidden in the ship's cargo bay, Sung-Ho checked his weapons one last time. Ready to fly. Ji-Wan is prepped too. Day-Wan looked at his team. They were good people. The best humanity had, and he was about to order them to almost certain death. On my mark, he said. For Earth, for Mars, for everyone we lost. For humanity, Taemin said quietly. It was the most he'd spoken in months. Day-Wan walked toward the council chamber guards. They were massive, easily twice his height, made of crystalline material that reflected rainbow light. Halt, one said. No unauthorized access. I have a message for the High Council, Day-Wan said. He dropped his submissive posture, standing straight. From the species you tried to exterminate. The guards moved fast, reaching for weapons. Day-Wan moved faster. Now! Everything happened at once. Yuna triggered her programs. Every security system in the sector crashed. Lights flickered. Doors locked or unlocked randomly. Alarms blared. Taemin's team dropped their robes and opened fire. The crystal guards shattered under focused plasma fire. Day-Wan ran through the opening door, his team behind him. The council chamber was huge. Circular, with elevated platforms where the alien leaders sat, dozens of them representing every species in the collective. They stared in shock at the humans bursting into their sacred meeting. What is the meaning of... One started. This is the meaning, Day-Wan shouted. He raised his weapon. You burned our home. You killed billions. You called it necessary, called it merciful. His voice echoed in the chamber. Now learn what humans call necessary. The team opened fire. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some aliens tried to flee. Others activated personal shields. Security systems, partially recovered from Yuna's hack, began deploying defensive drones. It was a nightmare of violence. Taemin moved through it like death itself, his training and rage combining into something terrifying. Each movement was precise, efficient, deadly. But there were too many defenders. For every alien that fell, two more appeared. The team was being pushed back. Day One. Yuna's voice crackled over the communicator. Security is adapting to my hacks. You have maybe 3 minutes before they lock down everything. Sung-Ho, we need extraction now. On my way. Sung-Ho launched from the docking bay. Ji-Wan was right behind him. They burst into the station's interior, flying through corridors never meant for fighters. Behind them, station defenses came alive, firing at the intruders. This is insane, Ji-Wan shouted. I know. Sung-Ho laughed, high on adrenaline and terror. Isn't it great? They reached the council chamber and opened fire on the walls. Explosive rounds tore through the station's hull. Atmosphere began venting into space. In the chamber, Daewon's team fought desperately. They'd killed many of the council members, but not all. And now they were surrounded, ammunition running low, wounds bleeding. Taemin took a plasma bolt to the chest. He went down, still firing until his weapon was empty. Then he smiled just slightly, as if finally at peace. "Commander, we need to go," someone screamed. Daewon looked at the remaining council members. So close, they'd come so close. "Pull back!" he ordered. To the fighters, they ran. Half the team was already dead. The survivors were wounded, exhausted, but still moving. Sung-Ho's fighter hovered near the hull breach, providing covering fire. "Come on, move!" One by one, the team members jumped into space, caught by the fighters' tractor beams. But the station's defenses were overwhelming. Plasma fire filled the void. One of the soldiers was hit mid-jump. They tumbled away into darkness. Ji-won was hit. Her fighter spun, systems failing. "I'm losing power." "Hold on." Sung-Ho tried to reach her, but enemy fire forced him back. In her laboratory on the distant ship, Yuna saw everything through the sensor data. She saw Ji-won's fighter dying, saw Daewon barely making it to Sung-Ho's ship, saw the station's main weapons powering up, preparing to destroy them all. She made a decision. "Arya," she said. "Full power to engines. Ramming course. Authorization Yuna Alpha 7. "That will destroy this ship," Arya said. "And kill you. I know. Do it anyway." "Yuna, I do not want you to die." Yuna smiled through her tears. The AI had become more human than she'd intended. "I know, Arya, but this is what humans do. We sacrifice for each other. It's what makes us worth saving." Arya was quiet for 1.3 seconds. Then, "I understand. Ramming course set." "Yuna, yes? It has been an honor to exist with you." "For me, too." The ship accelerated toward the Nexus, all stealth gone, burning at maximum thrust. The station's weapons turned toward it, firing, but it was too late. The ship hit the Nexus's power core. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The Nexus, home of the Collective's High Council, simply ceased to exist. Thousands of Collective personnel died instantly, and with them, most of the Council members who had survived the assault. Sung-Ho's fighter, barely functional, limped away from the blast wave. Inside, Daewon sat in stunned silence. "Yuna," he whispered. "Taemin, Ji-won, all of them." "Sir," Sung-Ho said, his voice breaking. "We need to go. We need to tell everyone what they did." Daewon nodded slowly. The lucky coin Ji-won had carried was in his pocket now, recovered from her damaged fighter before they'd abandoned it. He held it tight. "Take us home," he said. "What's left of it?" Behind them, the remains of the Nexus burned, and across collective space, sensors detected the explosion. News spread. The High Council was dead. The Nexus was destroyed, and somehow impossibly humans had done it. The legends had been made. The news spread through collective space like fire through dry wood. The High Council was dead. The Nexus was destroyed, and humans, the species marked for extermination, had done the impossible. On the Ark, Daewon received reports hourly. The Collective was fracturing. Without the Council to enforce unity, old rivalries between member species were surfacing. The Vryn and Quilnari were arguing over who should lead. Smaller species were questioning why they should follow anyone, but Daewon took no joy in it. He sat in his quarters holding Ji-won's lucky coin, staring at nothing. Hana found him there. "Commander," she said softly, "we're receiving transmissions. Hundreds of them. From species all over collective space." He didn't respond. "Some are offering alliance. Some are asking for help to rebel against their collective overseers. Some just want to know if the stories are true. Did we really destroy the Nexus? At what cost?" Daewon's voice was hollow. "We sent 12 people. One came back. And that one person brought victory." Hana sat beside him. "Sung-Ho is telling the story, making sure everyone knows what they did. Yuna, Taemin, Ji-won, they're becoming legends. I don't want legends. I want them alive, and I know. But they chose this. They knew the cost." She paused. "And their sacrifice is changing everything." She showed him the data. Across former collective territory, vassal species were rising up. Labor camps were being freed. Occupation forces were being attacked. The empire that had stood for 800 years was collapsing. "We can end this," Hana said. "Not with more war. With alliance. The species that were enslaved, they don't want new masters. They want freedom. We can give them that. Day One looked at her. Really looked at her. She was exhausted, haunted by losses just like he was, but she still had hope somehow. How? He asked. We call a council. A real one. Not rulers dictating to vassals, but equals meeting as allies. We help them rebuild, share technology, create something new. Why would they trust us? We're just as violent as the collective said. Because we fought for freedom, not conquest. We could have destroyed them when they were weak. Instead, we're offering partnership. Hana smiled slightly. That's not what conquerors do. That's what humans do. Over the next months, Day One and Hana traveled to dozens of worlds, former collective vassals all trying to figure out what came next. Some meetings were hostile. Some species blamed humanity for the chaos. Others welcomed them as liberators. Slowly, carefully, an alliance formed. Not the collective with its rigid hierarchy and enforced unity. Something new. Something that had never existed in the galaxy before. They called it the Free Species Coalition. 43 species joined in the first year. They signed a charter that Hana had drafted, working with representatives from across the galaxy, every species equal, every voice heard. Decisions made by consensus, not force. It'll never work, some of the human military advisors said. Too many species, too many different interests. They'll fight each other within a year. Maybe, Day One said, but we have to try. Because what's the alternative? Become what we fought against? Sung Ho, meanwhile, had become something he never wanted to be. A symbol. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. The ghost of Titan. The pilot who had fought in the Battle of Luna. Who had raided collective supply lines for 3 years. Who had helped destroy the Nexus. He hated it. I'm not a hero, he told anyone who would listen. I'm just a pilot who didn't die when I probably should have. But the stories spread anyway. Human pilots were teaching other species their tactics. Unpredictable, chaotic, creative tactics that worked precisely because they broke every rule of civilized warfare. Soon Vryn pilots were doing barrel rolls. Quilnari fighters were using asteroid fields for cover. The galaxy was learning to fight like humans, and it wasn't just military. Yuna's technological legacy spread too. Her ghost drives, her adaptive AI, her weapons systems. Other species scientists studied her work, amazed at the elegant chaos of human engineering. She broke every principle of logical design, one alien engineer said, looking at Yuna's schematics. Nothing is optimized. Nothing follows standard patterns. But it works. How does it work? Because humans don't think like you do, another scientist replied. They don't optimize. They improvise. The AI that Yuna had created, Arya, had survived. Her core program had been broadcasting when the ship exploded, and Yuna had designed backups. Human technicians recovered her and installed her in a new vessel. Arya remembered everything. She remembered Yuna's last words. She remembered the sacrifice. And she dedicated herself to preserving that memory, becoming the keeper of human history for the new age. 5 years after the destruction of the Nexus, Daiwan stood on Luna. Earth hung above him, still scarred but healing. Terraform engines were slowly restoring the atmosphere. Oceans were being reseeded with life. Cities were being rebuilt, different from before but still human. The monument beside him was newly completed. A wall of black stone, 50 meters high. Carved into it were names. 50,000 from Olympus Dome on Mars. 3,000 from the Battle of Luna. Hundreds of thousands more from Earth's fall. And prominently in letters that caught the light, Yuna, Taimin, Jiwan, the 12 who had gone to the Nexus. We call it the Wall of Legends, Hana said, walking up beside him. She'd aged in the last 5 years, but then they all had. People come from across the coalition to see it. They were just people, Daewon said quietly. Scared, brave people doing what needed to be done. Isn't that what legends are? A group of alien visitors approached the wall. Hana had told him to expect them. They were young members of species that had been enslaved by the collective. Now free, learning who they could be. One of them, a Vryn youth, touched the carved names gently. These are the ones who freed us? Some of them, Hana said. There were millions more. Humans who fought, and humans who just survived, which was its own kind of courage. Why did they fight? Another alien asked. They could have surrendered, lived as vassals. It would have been safer. Sung Ho had joined them, standing quietly at the back. Now he spoke. Because humans would rather die free than live on their knees. It's just how we're built. The young aliens were quiet thinking about that. Can you teach us? One finally asked. To be like that? To be free? Sung-Ho smiled. You're already learning. The fact that you're here, asking questions, thinking for yourselves. That's what freedom is. Later, when the visitors had gone, the three humans stood together at the wall. Daewon, Hana, Sung-Ho, survivors, leaders, legends, whether they liked it or not. Do you think it'll last? Sung-Ho asked. The coalition? I don't know, Hana admitted. Species are complicated. There are already disputes. Some want humans to lead, others resent our influence. It's messy. Messy is good, Daewon said. The collective was orderly, perfect, and it was evil. I'll take messy freedom over perfect tyranny any day. They looked up at Earth together. Ships were arriving and departing constantly now. Trade vessels, colony ships returning home. Construction haulers carrying materials for the rebuilding. Life. We lost so much, Sung-Ho said softly. Everyone we knew. Everything we had, but we survived, Hana replied. And we made sure it meant something. Daewon touched the wall, his fingers tracing Ji-won's name. They would have liked this. Seeing Earth heal, seeing the coalition, knowing their deaths actually changed things. They know, Sung-Ho said. He touched his chest where he'd had Ji-won's lucky coin embedded in a pendant. Somehow they know. The news spread through collective space like fire through dry wood. The High Council was dead. The Nexus was destroyed. And humans, the species marked for extermination, had done the impossible. On the Ark, Daewon received reports hourly. The collective was fracturing. Without the Council to enforce unity, old rivalries between member species were surfacing. The Vryn and Quilnari were arguing over who should lead. Smaller species were questioning why they should follow anyone. But Daewon took no joy in it. He sat in his quarters holding Ji-won's lucky coin, staring at nothing. Hana found him there. Commander, she said softly. We're receiving transmissions, hundreds of them, from species all over collective space. He didn't respond. Some are offering alliance. Some are asking for help to rebel against their collective overseers. Some just want to know if the stories are true. Did we really destroy the Nexus? At what cost? Daewon's voice was hollow. We sent 12 people, one came back. And that one person brought victory. Hana sat beside him. Sung-Ho is telling the story, making sure everyone knows what they did. Yuna, Taemin, Ji-won, they're becoming legends. I don't want legends. I want them alive. I know. But they chose this. They knew the cost. She paused. And their sacrifice is changing everything. She showed him the data. Across former collective territory, vassal species were rising up. Labor camps were being freed. Occupation forces were being attacked. The empire that had stood for 800 years was collapsing. We can end this, Hana said. Not with more war, with alliance. The species that were enslaved, they don't want new masters. They want freedom. We can give them that. Daewon looked at her. Really looked at her. She was exhausted, haunted by losses just like he was. But she still had hope. Somehow. How? He asked. We call a council. A real one. Not rulers dictating to vassals, but equals meeting as allies. We help them rebuild, share technology, create something new. Why would they trust us? We're just as violent as the collective said, because we fought for freedom, not conquest. We could have destroyed them when they were weak, instead we're offering partnership. Hana smiled slightly. That's not what conquerors do. That's what humans do. Over the next months, Daewon and Hana traveled to dozens of worlds. Former collective vassals, all trying to figure out what came next. Some meetings were hostile. Some species blamed humanity for the chaos. Others welcomed them as liberators. Slowly, carefully, an alliance formed. Not the collective, with its rigid hierarchy and enforced unity. Something new. Something that had never existed in the galaxy before. They called it the Free Species Coalition. 43 species joined in the first year. They signed a charter that Hana had drafted, working with representatives from across the galaxy. Every species equal, every voice heard, decisions made by consensus, not force. It'll never work, some of the human military advisors said. Too many species, too many different interests. They'll fight each other within a year. Maybe, Day One said, but we have to try, because what's the alternative? Become what we fought against? Sung Ho, meanwhile, had become something he never wanted to be, a symbol. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. The ghost of Titan, the pilot who had fought, in the Battle of Luna, who had raided collective supply lines for 3 years, who had helped destroy the Nexus. He hated it. I'm not a hero, he told anyone who would listen. I'm just a pilot who didn't die when I probably should have. But the stories spread anyway. Human pilots were teaching other species their tactics. Unpredictable, chaotic, creative. Tactics that worked precisely because they broke every rule of civilized warfare. Soon, Vryn pilots were doing barrel rolls. Quilnari fighters were using asteroid fields for cover. The galaxy was learning to fight like humans, and it wasn't just military. Yuna's technological legacy spread too. Her ghost drives, her adaptive AI, her weapons systems. Other species scientists studied her work, amazed at the elegant chaos of human engineering. She broke every principle of logical design, one alien engineer said, looking at Yuna's schematics. Nothing is optimized. Nothing follows standard patterns. But it works. How does it work? Because humans don't think like you do, another scientist replied. They don't optimize, they improvise. The AI that Yuna had created, Aria, had survived. Her core program had been broadcasting when the ship exploded, and Yuna had designed backups. Human technicians recovered her and installed her in a new vessel. Aria remembered everything. She remembered Yuna's last words. She remembered the sacrifice, and she dedicated herself to preserving that memory, becoming the keeper of human history for the new age. 5 years after the destruction of the Nexus, Day One stood on Luna. Earth hung above him, still scarred but healing. Terraform engines were slowly restoring the atmosphere. Oceans were being reseeded with life. Cities were being rebuilt, different from before but still human. The monument beside him was newly completed, a wall of black stone 50 meters high. Carved into it were names, 50,000 from Olympus Dome on Mars, 3,000 from the Battle of Luna, hundreds of thousands more from Earth's fall. And prominently in letters that caught the light, Yuna, Taimin, Jiwan, the 12 who had gone to the Nexus. We call it the Wall of Legends, Hana said, walking up beside him. She'd aged in the last 5 years, but then they all had. People come from across the coalition to see it. They were just people, Daiwan said quietly. Scared, brave people doing what needed to be done. Isn't that what legends are? A group of alien visitors approached the wall. Hana had told him to expect them. They were young members of species that had been enslaved by the collective, now free, learning who they could be. One of them, a Vryn youth, touched the carved names gently. These are the ones who freed us? Some of them, Hana said. There were millions more. Humans who fought, and humans who just survived, which was its own kind of courage. Why did they fight? Another alien asked. They could have surrendered, lived as vassals, it would have been safer. Sung Ho had joined them, standing quietly at the back. Now he spoke. Because humans would rather die free than live on their knees. It's just how we're built. The young aliens were quiet, thinking about that. Can you teach us? One finally asked. To be like that? To be free? Sung Ho smiled. You're already learning. The fact that you're here, asking questions, thinking for yourselves, that's what freedom is. Later, when the visitors had gone, the 3 humans stood together at the wall. Daewon, Hana, Sung Ho, survivors, leaders, legends, whether they liked it or not. Do you think it'll last? Sung Ho asked. The coalition? I don't know, Hana admitted. Species are complicated. There are already disputes. Some want humans to lead, others resent our influence. It's messy. Messy is good, Daewon said. The collective was orderly, perfect, and it was evil. I'll take messy freedom over perfect tyranny any day. They looked up at Earth together. Ships were arriving and departing constantly now. Trade vessels, colony ships returning home, construction haulers carrying materials for the rebuilding. Life. We lost so much, Sung-ho said softly. Everyone we knew. Everything we had. But we survived, Hana replied. And we made sure it meant something. Daewon touched the wall, his fingers tracing Ji-won's name. They would have liked this. Seeing Earth heal. Seeing the coalition. Knowing their deaths actually changed things. They know, Sung-ho said. He touched his chest where he'd had Ji-won's lucky coin embedded in a pendant. Somehow they know. In orbit above them, a new ship was being christened. A joint construction project between 7 different species, incorporating human, Vrin, and Quilnari technology. It was supposed to be impossible. Too many different engineering philosophies, but somehow it worked. They were calling it the Yuna, the first of a new class of vessels, not warships but exploration vessels, built to discover, not to destroy. Aria was going to be its AI core. She had requested the assignment herself. I wish to see what Yuna would have wanted to see, she had said. New worlds, new possibilities, new life. Across the galaxy, similar stories were unfolding. Former slaves were becoming citizens. Old enemies were becoming allies. The rigid order of the collective was being replaced by something chaotic, argumentative, and alive. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, still species that refused to forgive old wounds. But it was better. It was free. And humanity, the species that was supposed to be exterminated, had become the heart of it all. Not through conquest, but through example. Not through perfection, but through persistence. Daewon received a message that evening. It was from a former collective admiral, one of the few who had survived the fracturing. The message was short. You were right. We tried to end you because you were dangerous. We didn't realize that dangerous and alive are the same thing. You taught the galaxy to be alive again. I do not know if that is good, but it is real. Daewon showed the message to Hana. Is it good? He asked. What we did? I think so. But our children will decide that. And their children after them. Children? Sung-ho laughed. Imagine that. Human children growing up in a galaxy where humans aren't the enemy. Where we're just another species. Part of the community. That's the dream, Hana said. That's what they died for. They stood at the wall of legends as the sun set over Luna. Earth above them, healing. The stars beyond, full of allies and possibilities. And carved in stone, the names of those who had made it possible. Somewhere in deep space, a collective remnant still existed. A few hardliners who refused to accept the new order. They occasionally raided border worlds, trying to reclaim past glory. They would send threatening messages. The collective will rise again. You will kneel. And humanity would send back 3 words that had become famous across the galaxy. Humanity remembers. And in the dark between stars, on ships that moved unseen, human pilots and their alien students would prepare, not for conquest, not for extermination, but for defense, for freedom. Because the war was over, but the watch never ended. 10 years after the destruction of the Nexus, on the anniversary of the mission, Daewon returned to the Wall of Legends. He was older now, gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. He'd seen too much death, too much loss. But he'd also seen Earth reborn, seen the coalition grow to 73 member species, seen human and alien children playing together on Luna, speaking mixed languages, creating something new. He placed a flower at the base of the wall, an earth flower from one of the newly regrown gardens. We did it, he said to the names carved in stone. It's not perfect, but we're free, and we're alive. And that's what you wanted. A young voice spoke behind him. Are you Commander Daewon? He turned. A human child, maybe 10 years old, with wide, curious eyes. I am. My teacher says you're a legend. Daewon smiled sadly. I'm just someone who survived. But you saved everyone. You and the others. The heroes. They were the heroes. I just got to come home. The child thought about that. Will there be more wars? Probably. People, human or alien, aren't perfect. but we'll face them together now. Not alone. Good. The child smiled. I want to be a pilot when I grow up, like the Ghost of Titan. Then work hard, study, and remember that being a pilot isn't about fighting. It's about protecting what you love. The child ran off back to their parents. An interspecies couple, Daewon noticed. Human and Vryn. 10 years ago, impossible. Now just life. He looked up at the stars one last time. They had tried to end humanity. Instead, they had awakened something. Not just in humans, but in every species that had been crushed under the collective's order. The will to be free. The courage to fight for it. The wisdom to share it. The war was over. The legends lived on. And humanity, battered but unbroken, stood among the stars not as conquerors or victims, but as equals. As allies, as friends, as survivors, as legends,